Welcome everyone to the lecture 9 of the NPTEL course Climate Change and Extreme Events. In the previous lecture, we have talked about different types of data types of climate, how we can use those data set to basically get a more idea about from different sources. For example, let's say um, a reanalysis product or satellite data or observed ground based observation. Then we have also talked about different types of errors which are there in the data set, the data gaps, how we can fill them, and how we can understand different types of errors within the data set, and we can use different methodologies to basically correct the observed data set. In today's lecture, we will primarily focus on the climate models. What is exactly these climate models? What are their types? What is their resolutions? Resolutions can be spatial resolution or temporal resolution or different types of processes it can include in the model. And then towards the end of this lecture, we will also discuss about some of the application of the climate models in different parts of the world. So, this lecture is basically will provide you an overview of the what is exactly climate models and how we can use those climate modeling system to let's say you can analyze certain processes, whether is it the temperature is rising or which place of the place is continuously rising. So, once this fact has been established based on the historical record, and we know that there is certain processes which are responsible for increase in the temperature of different parts of the world, then using this information, the physical process information, we can make some sort of mathematical representation of those process. Some of a single process or multiple processes are interlinking or changing the behavior of the system. Once we established all these system, we would be able to predict the let's say temperature profile or different types of climatic variables based on different types of scenario assessment. Let's suppose if we can also understand, let's say if the temperature is rising above 1.5 degree or if it is more than 2 degree or 4 degree, like that, in those scenarios, how the climate variables will behave, which place of the world or which region is going to get more intense rainfall events or more frequent, let's say, heat wave events or more frequent cold waves events, like that. So, these are the model which are very important, which basically uses the historical information within the system, and that can use to predict what is going to happen in the future scenarios. Sometimes these models can be also be used to reconstruct the paleoclimatic behavior. Paleoclimatic means what is the past climate conditions of earth when there was very different let's say continental movement, or they very different the Himalayas were not formed or were formed, something like that. So, these are the scenario assessment can also be done, and then we can also do some sort of historical or past climate reconstruction. For example, we can talk about last glacial melt event or younger dies event or something like that. So, the climate models are very useful tool which can give us a broad perspective of the processes interaction, and using this framework we would be able to predict for future what is likely to be happen in different parts of the world, as well as we can also do the same analysis for historical reconstruction of that particular region. So, therefore, it is very important to understand what is exactly these models are. In this lecture, we will primarily talk about what is exactly climate models and what is their purposes, different types of models, like that. We will also talk about different types of climate models and their input behavior, like that. Then we will also talk about the different characteristics of model. For example, what is the model resolution, spatial resolution like that, and why it matters, let us say. So, this we will also talk about in this lecture. Then we will also talk about the key application of these models in different parts of the world, and why it is important to use these climate models for understanding the extreme climatic behavior or climate change behavior in different parts of the world like that. So, what are climate models? So, as in the beginning of this lecture we have discussed about, it is a mathematical representation of climate system based on certain physical, chemical or biological principle. Let us say you have multiple different spheres which are earth system or environmental science, we study that. There are multiple spheres that could be your atmosphere, hydrosphere, cryosphere, biosphere, geosphere. So, that all when you club it together, that makes your representation of your earth system or climates, or let us say what is the exactly interaction of earth system in different as a whole, or also regional scale as well. So, when you know all these different spheres, and you know about certain processes of different spheres, and you can also let us say represent these processes in some sort of mathematical equation. That is basically, once you able to do this, we can basically reconstruct or basically can formulate a model which can represent the process interaction as well as in different spheres, and can model it and then can also calculate what is their interaction and how the climate variables are changing because of these interaction and all. So, this is exactly is called climate model. Primarily these types of models are used for climate dynamics. Suppose we are interested in understanding about let us say how the rainfall pattern is likely to be changed or has been changed already, or which let us say large scale phenomena, for example ENSO or Indian dipole, ocean dipole, IOD can modulate it. Yeah, is there any evidence of that, whether if the extreme events in certain part of India is changing, whether any large scale processes has any correlation or relationship with this. So, let us say if these kind of hypotheses we can test using the climate dynamics, we can have a large scale phenomena in the climate model. We can also have the regional scale prediction of different meteorological properties at different places also, that can correlate or interact with each other, and that can give us an insight about what is their likelihood conditions for their one to one correlation or one to one response behavior, process or response behavior like that. Climate models are also used for prediction of future, because in the future scenario we do not have a certain characteristic. We do not know exactly which way the earth, the climate behavior or different types of spheres will basically behave in the future conditions. To deal with it, basically we define the future scenario in different types of scenarios. For example, if the greenhouse gas emission will be very high or in the moderate condition or very low condition or low condition, something like that, based on some sort of socio-economic pathways or socio-economic scenarios like that. Then based on those information we can basically use it in our modeling system, climate model, and then we can predict, let us say if the greenhouse gas emission is likely to be very high in the future, if we all use fossil fuel based vehicular transport system, and we are not let us say not moving towards hybrid system or some renewable energy sources like that. So, what would be the condition of the future of earth like that in those scenarios? So, therefore, in that scenario assessment, these climate models are very useful, and that can give us a more robust results about what is likely to happen in the future scenario. Then we can test the hypothesis about climate processes. So, as I suggested that okay, there are certain processes are happening at the same time, whether all these processes are interlinked. For example, if we are interested in let us say there is a soil moisture change, there is a flood intensity change, there is a rainfall extreme, is there any correlation between all these processes at certain level? So we make a hypothesis, we run these models, and then we basically check whether our hypothesis is correct or not, or whether it is correct, then what is likely to be happen in different scenarios as well. So this is the purpose of the climate models, which basically we use for simulation of entire earth, different sphere of earth, and then their mutual interactions like that. So as we suggested, there are several components in this model, that is called atmosphere, ocean, land surface, cryosphere, which are distributed across different spheres like that. Now the question is, how many types of climate model exist? So there are several types of climate. I have listed some of them. For example, there is a model called Earth System Models, which is ESMs. So these Earth System Models are called advanced model, or incorporating biogeochemical cycle or multiple different spheres, Earth system spheres, environmental spheres, which can basically integrate it into one, and then basically can model Earth as a whole. What is how they are interacting with each other like that. There is a model called regional climate models, which are high resolution climate models, which are used for region specific study. Let's say if we are talking about only Indian subcontinent, or let's say if you are talking about North American region, or let's say if you are talking about Western European part, or let's say if we are talking about Japan or something like that. So these are the areas, if we are interested in what is likely to be a condition in the future scenario based on a high resolution data set, we basically use some sort of regional climate model, and that gives more detailed information about the climate variables, how the climate variables are changing given the condition with different emission scenarios like that. Then we have general circulation models, which is basically a complex model which simulate primarily the atmospheric part and also the oceanic part, how these two phenomena are or processes are interlinked, and how they are changing with different warming scenarios like that. So these are called general circulation model. Then we have also the energy balance model, which is a simplified model where we are focusing on Earth's energy budget, which we receive some amount of energy from sun as a form of short waves, and then some amount of energy absorbed by the land use, land cover characteristics, and then re-emitted back to the atmosphere in the long wave radiation wavelength. So basically we understand this process, and we basically use this energy balance concept in the earth interaction, and then we can understand about how the energies are, let's say earth energies or budgets are changing across changing in the some sort of characteristics of land use, land cover. When you talk about global climate models or different types of climate models, the model resolution is one of the important characteristics or properties which we have to look at. So what is resolution? Resolution is defined as the size of the grid cell in a model. What is grid cell? It basically covers a certain amount part of the area. It is generally represented in a square cell where we have equal width and equal length. It could be your kilometer scale or tenth of kilometer scale, or maybe it could be your meter scale or sub-meter scale as well. So it depends upon the area where you are applying. If you are applying, let's say for global scale, of course your resolution will not be very fine. It will be a coarser resolution climate system. When we are applying it for very regional scale, then it is possible that we can downscale, or we can lower the grid cell into very fine resolution, so that we can have more detailed process interaction of for different areas like that. So the size of the grids in the model represents the spatial and temporal scales. For example, if you look at here, in 1990 we have a very coarser resolution climate models, but in 1996 the model has been improved further, and the resolution has been significantly reduced, and it has been finer. Then in 2001 it is even finer, and 2007 it is much finer than if you compare to 1990, and the latest IPCC report use more finer resolution data set and covering the whole globe like that. So, the importance of having the finer resolution data set is we can have a better control on a very specific part of the world, but at the same time when we have a finer resolution, it will also cost a higher efficiency of computation. It requires more computational infrastructure, for example. But let us say if you have coarser resolution data, then it is possible that you can run the simulation for entire globe or a very large area of earth without compromising with your computational efficiencies. So, therefore, the resolution and computational efficiencies are two important points where we have to keep in balance between these two in order to get more precise results like that. So, this is what we have already discussed. Okay. So, what are the component in the climate model? As we have suggested, there are several types of earth system representation can be done by using different component. For example, atmosphere, which basically the part of this component of global climate model or climate models simulates the winds, temperature, humidity, precipitation in the global coverage or maybe in the regional settings also. In the ocean component, it basically primarily look at currents, salinity, heat transport from one place to another place like that. Then we have another component is called land surface, which is basically models how the vegetation, soil or hydrology or water resource are interacting with each other in the response of, let us say, changing behavior of atmospheric properties like that. Then we have another component, it is called cryosphere, which simulates the ice sheet, sea ice, snow cover and their responses in conjunction with, let us say, atmospheric changes or changes in the behavior of temperature, rainfall, wind velocities, all of these basically we take into account, and then basically we use these component to basically look at how these components are affected. So, this is one of the figure which tells multiple different processes across one certain region. Here you can see that there is a a sea and ocean body here, which is continuously interacting with your atmosphere, heat exchange through matter exchange, for example, evaporation, precipitation through water cycle like that. Then we have some sort of atmospheric component where we have cloud, where we have different types of gases, aerosols, there is a volcanic eruptions, then there is a certain amount of gas releases in the atmosphere that also interact with your cloud or atmospheric substances, and that basically changes their properties as well. So, that is what we also uses in the model. Then we have also solar radiation, how much energy is coming from sun, how much is absorbed by different land use, land cover properties, how much is basically leaving from the earth and basically interacting with your different types of gases which are there. Then we have also, let us say, human contribution, how much human are contributing to greenhouse gas emission, how much the human activities are basically changing the land use, land cover practices, completely changing the forest cover into your agricultural areas like that, and that has significant impact on the energy budget or absorption or reflectance properties of electromagnetic waves like that. Then we have land surface pattern, where we have land surface component where we have vegetation, animal, biodiversity, that is basically interacting with your atmosphere and biosphere interaction through the carbon cycle and all. Then we have cryosphere component where we have glaciers, sea ice, ice sheet, and there we have sea ice like that, and then we have ecosystem of mountains and all, which are represented in the global climate model. So, all of them are interacted with the global climate model, and then basically based on this complex process response, we can able to find out how much the behavior has been changed under certain different scenarios like that. When we develop this climate model, there are process representatives, of course, is the primary one, where we have to be very careful about what are those processes which are represented in the model when we are using that model for certain region or global coverage. There is another important factor is how much we are validating or calibrating our model. For example, if we are selected one model, what is their accuracy, whether the model is giving us a good results or not good results, like that. So how do we do that? Basically, how we can check the accuracy of the model? There are two methods. One is called calibration, another called is validation. Calibration is basically, let's say you have represented the mathematical representation of different processes in a climate model. These mathematical equations might have some sort of parameters A, B, C. If you think about linear regression, if you think about non-linear equations like that, quadratic equations. So all these equations might some have some sort of parameters. Similarly, when you are representing these processes in the model setup itself, it might have also some sort of different parameters. So when we are dealing with different types of parameters and when we are using some sort of input data set, we need to calibrate our model first. Calibrate means we would like to fix the parameter values for different types of simulations. So we are fixing the parameter value. Let's say there is a simple model y is equal to ax plus b. Okay, there is a two parameter a and b, and here a and b you are fixing with the help of observed data set, which when they are in the field observation, or let's say you have already observed in the historical conditions, like that. Once you develop this a and b or parameter value, you basically use the fixed model where you have already defined the a and b or parameter value for the historical data set, which we have not reviewed at all while calibrating your model for a certain region. That is called validation. So in one step, we are revealing the data, historical observed data, with the model, so that model can fix their parameter at certain point, can converge at one point, and once it has been converged, then we will use the rest of the data set, which can be used for validation purpose, whether the fixed model or converged model is basically giving us a good results or not good results, like that. So this is called validation. There is another step is called verification. Once we have already done the validation step, we can use this model again for test data set or verification further, whether the model is giving us a good stability or good results or not. So these are the model representation where some sort of forcings we are input. Then we have also giving some sort of boundary conditions. It gives some results during the simulation process, and then when we are using the results, we can test the model validity using the calibration and validation purpose. And once it is done, when you are satisfied whether this model is giving us a good accuracy, then you can use these fixed model for some sort of projections and analysis of mechanism or whatever means you are using for that climate models, like that. Why it is important? Suppose if you do not do the calibration and validation, which means the model is not able to, model has a mathematical representation of the process, but it might possible that process interaction in a certain region might be different from different regions. Therefore, we need to calibrate the model so that they can represent actual condition of the place, and then we can use it for your further simulation purpose. Then the results which we obtained from the model would be more accurate or less errors, like that. So this is all about this is all about the model verification, validation and calibration, and how to set up the climate models, like that. Now the another question comes is, what is the application of this climate model? One application we know, okay, we can use the model, setup model for future climate, and we can understand let's say what is happening with the climate variables under different scenarios, like that. And once we have these different scenarios results, let's say if you add if you increase the population counts, and then you say that okay, if the human forcings are likely to be increased in the future conditions, how the system will behave. That is one set of model. If you let's say in certain region the human population are decreasing, therefore human stresses are also decreasing, then you can also think about developing a model there, and then you can do the simulation for that region also. And let's suppose if in a certain region the extreme events are frequency has been increased, what is the likelihood condition of the drought frequencies, or meteorological drought, or hydrological drought, or agricultural drought, or let's say what is the frequency of the floods there. So these are the questions can be answered through these climate models, and then we can suggest a public awareness, or to the communicating the potential risk of climate in the future to the public awareness based on certain different risk hazard assessment of that particular region like that. It is basically also important to understand the climate processes. So this climate model also used for how the complex interaction between different processes occurs in the real world scenario, and then we can test different types of scenarios, for example GHG reduction, GHG increment, or let's say the temperature rise, temperature fall, like that. So these are the research questions we can answer using these climate models. And based on these different scenario assessment, one can also formulate the policies for climate mitigation, adaptation strategies, assessing the risk of extreme weather events in different parts of the world like that. So this is overall the application of the climate model when we are using already the setup model in certain regions like that. Some of these case studies tells you about, let's say, how the climate model can be used. For example, in the case study 1, IPCC climate projection use global circulation models, and their finding is that the temperature is likely to be increases and sea level will also increases at the same time. So here if you look at this the historical as well as the future climate projections, you can see that it is started from 1850 until 2024, 23 or 24 like that here, and after that we are projecting what is likely to be the situation in future till 2100. So this is we have already seen, therefore there is a one single line, but after this we do not have exact idea about which way the climate will take the which pattern. So therefore we use some sort of scenario based assessment, which is shared socioeconomic pathways 1, which is 2.6, SSP 2, SSP 5 like that, and based on these shared socioeconomic pathways we predict what is likely to be happen in the future conditions. So in all the future scenarios it tells that temperature is likely to be increases. In some scenarios the change will be little bit gradual relatively, however in some scenarios the change will be quite fast, and therefore it will drastic change the temperature profile across the whole world like that. The second case study is telling about the regional climate model for monsoon prediction in South Asia. In this, let's say if you are interested in how the monsoon has been shifted in the Asian or South Asian country and what is their timing, intensity, magnitude like that, in this particular research IMD has done some sort of different types of modeling, and then based on that they have predicted how the monsoon will change their behavior in the future or historical part of the world like that. So this is a kind of process understanding or process response modeling of a certain region based on a very high resolution or regional climate model system like that. Then we have another case 3 which is basically earth system modeling for carbon cycle feedback. So we are primarily looking at how the earth system will behave when we carbon cycle, the behavior will change, or is it a positive change or is it a negative change, and once we have the positive change what will happen, once we have let's say negative feedback, there is what will happen in the atmospheric warming scenarios like that. So all of these hypotheses can be checked by when we have already set up the climate model, and that can be used for testing these sort of hypotheses. Overall, when we talking about climate models, they are very useful because they can give us more insight about climate, climate science, hydrological, water resource or ocean or terrestrial environment or biogeochemical cycle like that. But it also has some sort of uncertainty. For example, if we do not know exact the process understanding or interaction in certain region, it might also create some sort of uncertainty in terms of parameterization, because we do not know exactly how they are interacting with each other. So, that is the lack of information there that can produce some sort of uncertainty. Sometime it is also create some sort of error or uncertainty, because we are oversimplifying some processes, overlooking small scale processes, because we do not have a very finer resolution data set. We are relying upon coarser resolution data set like that, or we are ignoring completely the topography of certain region, the fine details of that topography in that region. Therefore, it can basically lead to some sort of uncertainty in their temperature, rainfall, humidity pattern like that. Then there is another problem associated with the global these climate models, which can be the computational intensity, as we have in the previous slide suggested, that when you increase the resolution size, it might possible that it will basically affect your resolutions or computational efficiency of the model, and therefore you need to make a balance between you are taking the high resolution, low resolution data set, and there what would be the computational efficiencies like that. Therefore, you need some sort of supercomputer or more advanced computer to run these climate models to understand more better about these data. Then there are certain trends which are happening in the current time period, which are basically changing the climate modeling pattern, also advancing their field. For example, we are using some sort of advanced computational power enable more detailed simulations, high resolution models with the supercomputer, so that we can have better understanding about very fine detail of all these processes across world, which we have just listed, that topography information, fine detail processes are completely missing when you are using. So, we can incorporate it and we can use it using some sort of high resolution or more computationally efficient model. Then we can use some sort of multi-model ensemble, combining multiple outputs from different models. Suppose one model is set up by European country, one model is set up by Indian subcontinent, one is set up by, let us say, Japanese or Chinese or European or US, like that. So, we take all the output from different model simulations, and then we take the average value from that, that is called ensemble. So, multi-model ensemble can be one way where we can basically overcome the limitation of one certain model from the learning from the other models like that. There is another way to improve the efficiencies is hybrid modeling approach, where the process which we understand can be done by mathematically equations, but the processes which we are completely random, we do not know exactly how they are interacting with each other, can be done using some sort of non-linear relationship or AI based tools or machine learning based tools, that is called hybrid modeling or hybrid approach like that. Then we can also use some sort of ML or machine learning algorithm for downscaling our data set to much finer scale, and that can be used for multiple different purposes like that. So, therefore, these are some of the techniques which can be used for is evolving, and that will further enhance understanding of climate model in real world scenarios like that in future step. So, overall in this lecture we have talked about what is exactly climate models, how they are essential tools for understanding and predicting the climate. Then we have also talked about what is model resolution, why it why it is a very important parameter, what are their types, critical for specific applicability like that. Then we have also talked about advances in modeling and improving the accuracy, what is their uncertainty, what is the error, how do we increase the efficiency of the model using the calibration or validation steps like that. So, this is what we have covered so far in this particular lecture. So, in the activity part, I would suggest we can you can use some sort of climate models, or you can search it, and then you can look at how they are predicting local climate or some sort of region based on different scenarios, how likely to be in future step or future conditions particular city or district are likely to be changed, their behavior will be changed. You can look at, you can read about these how you can do that from the literature or some data source which are already available in the internet, and then you can try to see how you can implement these different tools which are there, and data set which are also available can be integrated together, and then you can start thinking about how you can produce a map or trends or patterns for certain regions like that. In the next lecture, we will talk about more detailed manner in the probability and distribution in the climate data analysis. Thank you so much for your attention.